healthcare system, you have to focus on the problem in the healthcare system. And if the problem is we don't have enough ICU beds, then we should have known this 6 months ago, 6, 7, 8 months ago, if assuming that the modeling had been correct, and take corrective action 8 months ago, 9 months ago. But instead what we're doing is we're trying to save the healthcare system by essentially now, with a stay-at-home order, imprisoning, putting under house arrest the entire population, virtually all of whom are healthy and not infected. They're not sick, they're not carrying the infection or anything like that. So what we're doing is we're blanketing the whole province, and we're negatively impacting everybody rather than focusing on the problem. And the problem is, number one, ICU beds. We should have been expanding those facilities already in anticipation of this problem, of the increased numbers, because everybody knew there was going to be a second wave, number one. And number two, in those jurisdictions, in those local areas where there are outbreaks, where you feel that you have to have quarantines, then quarantine people who are infected. Don't quarantine people who are healthy. And of course, the result of what we're doing now is that we're starving the government for the very resources that it needs to be able to correct the problem. And it's approaching the whole. You're absolutely right. And to make matters worse, can I make the observation that now the chickens are really coming home to roost? Because not only do we have a lack of revenue now because of the silly upside down way that we're responding to this pandemic, but in addition to that, we didn't have any room left on our credit card because we've spent it's not only that we've spent all of our money, we've exhausted our lines of credit when the going was good, not leaving ourselves the kind of financial resources that you think would be necessary and needed and used in order to react efficiently and quickly to a crisis like this. So, on multiple levels here, we've had failure of government, and not just one government, but successive governments who have just failed to do everything that's necessary to protect the public, to provide the healthcare services that we require, to provide some emergency a reasonable emergency reaction. I mean, I could go on and on, but what we have here is a comprehensive failure of government, and they're just compounding that by doing what they're doing now. And that is, as I said in my podcast, the definition, someone once said that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again in the same circumstances and expecting a different result. And that's what they're doing here, is that the measures that they've put in place, every single time they tighten the screws on the population, it hasn't resulted in a check on the increase on the rate of infection, which is what they're trying to accomplish. No. So what is their response? Double down, and then double down again. It's crazy.
And when that doesn't work, we'll double down again. I mean, how far? I guess one of the questions is just how long are they going to keep this up until they finally admit that even if they didn't say we got it wrong, but they can say that the modeling failed us. We didn't we weren't giving any excuse you want, but you got to stop this. You can't keep doing this because it's really gutting the economy, which is as serious as the health crisis is. If you believe there's a real health crisis, let's say for the sake of this discussion that we do. Okay, so this is just as serious. How do you pay for all this? Because the vaccine isn't free. even the stupid paper masks they give you aren't free. Somebody's got to pay for them somewhere, and you know who that somebody usually is. So where do we get this stuff? Where do we get them? How do we get them to the point, or at what point will they admit that what they're doing isn't working and takes an entirely, completely new rethink?
Well, I don't know that they're going to, Nick. And, you know, you just touched very briefly on what I think is the ultimate question, and that is, after you've shut down businesses, after you've imposed curfews, after you've imposed a stay-at-home order, after you have the police stopping people on the street, asking them to justify whether or not what their reason is for being out of the house, okay, and you're finding people, what's next? The only thing left, and I'm not suggesting we're on the verge of this, but the only thing left is martial law, some sort of a modern, contemporary version of the old War Measures Act, where now we have the Army patrolling the streets, and we have habeas corpus suspended. I mean, is that what we want? Because that's we're not far from that.
To all of that, no, we're not. But here's why I don't think that's going to happen: because we don't have enough people in the Army to be able to enforce that. You think about it. There's really only about 15,000 guys that carry rifles in this country.
Okay, well, that's a practical thing, but I think the question is very valid, and that is
it is. I'm not saying it's not.
So we can't as a practical matter we can't impose martial law. Good.
Right.
What do we do next?
But that doesn't mean it wouldn't. It doesn't mean that they're basically doing it de facto instead of going all the way and calling out the Army and doing martial law. They're trying to do it by degrees, and people seem far too willing to go along with it.
Yeah,
they don't understand what's at stake, because once the government gets it in their head that they can just manipulate you like that, they are not going to stop doing it. It's something that they will do over and over and over again. It's like taxation. When's the last time taxes went down significantly?
Well, my friend, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but I know from my perspective, I have absolutely reached the end of my patience and tolerance. I have given everybody the benefit of the doubt. I have on our broadcasts, Nick, early on when we talked about this stuff, I made a point of saying I don't necessarily agree with the way the government is handling this, but in the springtime anyway, we didn't really know what we were dealing with. They erred on the side of caution. They weren't really sure about the right reaction was. But we know now. We have answers. So again, I don't know what they think they're going to do next. But I can virtually guarantee you that a stay-at-home order is not going to solve the problem. Because if it was going to solve the problem, then we would have seen already some success with the measures that they have been taking, and we haven't.
Right. No, and that's a whole reason why we need to take a break and pay some bills and that kind of stuff. Okay,
so that's Nick's hint. So we're going to be back in a few minutes here. If you're listening to the live show, stay with us. And if you're listening to the podcast, thanks for joining us on the Nick and Joe Show, and we'll catch you the next time. And again, if you're listening to the live broadcast, stay put, and we'll be back in just a few minutes.